Hello, welcome to Better at Home. My name's Miriam. Thank you for joining me today. Today we are talking to Tina Baker. Tina is a broadcaster, journalist, soap critic, winner of Celebrity Fit Club, fitness instructor, force of nature, and now author of this book, Call Me Mummy, which we will come on to in a minute because there is a lot to say about this book. How we're going to fit it in 25 minutes, I don't know. But thank you for joining us today, Tina.
Thank you. I feel like I should do a Mexican wave when I see my book out in the world, because my book's got a better social life than I have. I've not been out of the house for a year.
Well, it's lovely that you're joining us today. Before we start talking about the book, can we talk about the process of you getting to write the book? Did you always want to write a book? Had you always got in mind to write a novel? How did you get to that point where you thought, I'm going to sit down now and write it?
I've always wanted to write something. So when I was at school, like we lived in a caravan, brought up with fairground, mum, window cleaner, dad. It's sort of like I like reading, and they really encouraged me to read. But like writing a novel was not on the job prospect. So even at school, I was encouraged not to do English at university because I should do science and get a proper job. But I ended up following my heart, doing English at Sheffield University. And then somehow, you know, how you sort of fall into careers. I became a journalist and got to write as a journalist. And as you said, I sort of got a weird job, really. By the end of it, I was sort of like a television critic, worked for the TV Times and GMTV on Lorraine's programme and stuff. But I always wanted to write a novel, and it wasn't until my mum and dad died, and I thought, well, what am I waiting for? You know, I'm pretty old to be a first-time author, and I went back to school and did an MA in creative writing at City University, and as a result of that, this is one of the sort of the school homework things was go somewhere you've never been before. And I went to mother care because, you know, I tried to have kids, didn't have kids. And it would, you know, I mean, even when I talk about it, you can hear my voice goes a bit wobbly and my asthma kicks in, because in mother care, I had a complete meltdown. And I was like sobbing uncontrollably. And people were like looking at me and was, oh. And the book originally, the very first scene in the book when the child stolen was written as if she was stolen from mother care. By the time the book was published, mother care had sort of gone under, but that's how it started. And you know, it's been a long time coming, really. You know, so I'll be nearly 63 by the time the book's published. But you know, that's decades of wanting to do it. It always tickles me on like the X Factor or something. They say, oh, it's my life's dream, and they're 16, and it's like, no, I'm not a pensioner. You know, it's taken so long to give myself permission and
Mm.
time and the space and the brain space to do it.
So do you feel like an author now? Because I was reading some of your blogs and where you talk about feeling like an author and not quite feeling like an author. When you kind of had the book in your hand, have you had that moment yet where you think, yes, I'm an author now?
It's having the book physically means a lot, but there's still part of myself that thinks it's an elaborate hoax, because that's what my sort of self-doubt does, and I've lived with that all my life. So it doesn't really matter if you do something, unless I think you grow into feeling that you're a writer. So, you know, literally I was a journalist for 30 odd years, and I still felt shy putting that on my passport. You know, you have to say what you do. I've been teaching Keep Fit for 14 years for better. And I still sort of feel like, well, I'm not, you know, I've done all the exams and everything, but there's still a self-doubt of like, will they think I'm a proper teacher? So being like a proper author, I don't know. I don't know how long it'll take me. The only image I can say, when I lost a lot of weight, I lost like nearly 3 stone. It took me a good couple of years to realize I was this weight rather than 3 stone bigger. And I'd always pick the wrong sizes. Can you remember the old days when we could go into shops and do that? You know,
Yes.
just felt it feels like you shed a skin and
Mm,
then you have to grow a new one. So
mm.
I don't know how long it'll take before I realise I am.
Okay, I'm going to hold the book up again. Here we go. Call me mummy. So let's talk about this book, because there's a lot to say about this book. There's a lot going on. You mentioned that it starts basically with a child being abducted, being taken by this character who in the book is called Mummy. That's how she's referred to in the book. Can you just kind of, I always worry with kind of thrillers and crime novels, I'm going to give away a spoiler. So I shall leave it to you to just give us an overview of what the book is actually about, if you can.
So I haven't stolen a child, but the truth is I've wanted to.
Mm,
And, so I've got no boundaries. It's all in there. When you see a little kid being shouted at in the street and having that grieving, it's a process. Like some days it hits you like a sledgehammer. Like
mm,
I would have loved to be a mother. I've got cats and they have to sort of put up with my mothering. When I'm teaching a keep fit class, I'm like mother hen. It's got to go somewhere. Mummy is partly based on that part of me that was desperate and is on some days still desperate. I do think post-menopause there is a hormonal switch off, so it's not like the overwhelming first thing I think of first thing in the morning. For a long time it was the first thing I thought of and the last thing I thought of, and it colours everything. So I am partly mummy, and mummy is also based on my own mother's experience. So there's a religious aspect to the book. And where does religion become fanaticism? So my mum's Catholic background, abused by nuns, she had her left hand tied behind her back because that's a mark of the devil, very, sort of enlightened. And she was a very disturbed person, and our relationship was very fractured. So I'm also partly the little girl who's stolen, and when you're not the perfect daughter.
mm,
And then because obviously I'm a bit northern, a bit common, I've got tattoos, and I swear a lot. Don't worry, I don't swear in interviews, but I swear a lot in my mind as well. I'm very much Kim, and because she looks how she looks, and because she's a flawed human being, like we all are, she is absolutely crucified by the press.
mm,
And I didn't work in that aspect of journalism, but I remember reading about cases like Madeleine McCann, Shannon Matthews, and I just think it must be the worst thing in the world losing a child. And then I think in the media, and particularly social media, you are vilified as a woman. You're too fat, you're too thin, you're either a working mother, so you're not at home enough, or you're a stay-at-home mother and you don't have a career, and we can't win. So
mm,
there's all those aspects in it, really. I've
mm,
chucked the kitchen sink, my heart, my soul, my deepest fears, my darkest fears at it. So yeah, it's not, I don't think it, never think it's that thrilling. I mean, it is a thriller, that's how it's categorized, but I
mm,
always thought the thriller was James Bond, and
mm,
mine's very much domestic and psychological. It's not, spies and running around glamorous locations.
mm, mm.
So
Yeah, because when I started to read it, obviously it starts with this woman who takes a child, and from the start that she's always wanted a child, and that's why she takes a child. But actually, that's the tip of the iceberg, really. I thought in the whole novel, because actually the more you read, the more about her past and her character is revealed, and actually Kim's as well, because there's most of the narration is between Kim and Mummy, isn't it? Most of it comes from their perspective, and actually they're two different women, but they have very similar, lots of similarities, very kind of similar backgrounds. So was that kind of intentional on your part to do that?
Absolutely. I love that phrase, like it's tip of the iceberg. Yeah,
Mm,
that's sort of, it's that judgment that I do, hands up. You see somebody in the street, you don't have to speak to them, or in social media, and you see this facade,
mm,
and it's instant judgment.
mm,
So it's not just a class thing, but class is really well, you can tell how important it is to me by the way I say class. So it's like class is hugely important and how we judge people. And, Mummy's beautiful middle class life on the surface, and Kim's this, sort of roughy tufty. It's set at an estate down the road from me where I live, where I used to teach Zumba. In fact, some of the ladies who were sort of peripheral characters, and Kim's best friend, Aisha, was, I also taught at Finsbury Park Mosque. So that's, she's one of the friends that appears in it. So yeah, it's about judgments and how people sound or look. And it's so easily to pile on social media now. I used to edit a problem page for Dr. Miriam Stoppard on TV Times. So I used to get those horrible letters, letters that you really want to put rubber gloves on to read. But now it's even easier. You just, people just press a button on the phones, don't they?
They do. And I really liked that in the book, though, because just to tell people who won't have read it yet, in between the story are little kind of little snippets, little chapters from there's like a WhatsApp group and a Facebook page, and even just bystanders. And it's a bit like a kind of Greek chorus, really, in a tragedy. It's like like you've got this narration, this kind of social narration going on. And it's really, like, I really enjoyed those bits. I thought they were really effective in kind of taking the story out and making it wider and really making you think as a reader, actually, it's something we probably all do, making those judgments about people. But that was I thought that was a really effective kind of tool in the book. It really kind of opened up the story and it really made you think. There are lots of kind of quite dark parts of the story. How did you feel?
That's how I grew up.
How did you feel writing them? Did they kind of haunt your dreams? How did it feel kind of writing those quite dark scenes?
I wanted it to be real as I could make it. So some of those things have happened to me, not in that way, but I wanted to be exposed in a way. I mean, I didn't think that, writing it, I knew people had asked me about that. So it's like some of the worst periods of my life. So feeling absolutely suicidal because I couldn't have a child, that breakdown in mother care of like feeling absolutely worthless as a human being, having been abused as a kid, having had friends and relatives who'd been abused, and as I say, people who should be looking after you, like nuns, being vile, and how religion makes you, I mean, the lines in it about, you've got options as a Catholic to be a mother or a whore or a virgin. That's your career options, really. And it's a joke, and I often say things very lightly, but it impacts. So for me, it's like any religion that's fanatical, women don't come out of it very well. It's like, you can't win. Those writing it actually felt a bit cathartic. Yes, it preys on your mind, but it feels like now it's out there. Funnily enough, I'm in the middle of editing the second one, and that's no walk in the park either. That's about sort of domestic abuse and addiction. And again, it's sort of aspects that I've had direct experience of and loved ones have had direct experience of. So I feel on a bound to make it the best I can and write as best I can. But I also think, I wish I could just make something up. If I was a better writer, I wouldn't have, like a method actor has to go in there. I sort of feel I have to like go in there to write the best I can. And like I sort of see other writers seem to just do it from their mind. And mine's like heart, soul and body. I've been physically sick writing. Hope I don't make people physically sick when they read it. But you know what I mean? It's sort of sobbing sessions and sleepless nights. I think it's par for the course. I mean, even before the pandemic, I was going through that. From the pandemic, I think, it was only when I got the first injection that I had one night where I slept all the way through. So, I'm a very flawed person,
Mm,
and I wanted to make something of that,
mm,
it's like make something that other people can read and either identify with or just read as a thriller,
mm,
take it as you want. It's really weird thinking of readers reading it, you've read it. So it's like I feel you know everything about me, you know the worst bits about me. Hopefully, there's some dark humour in there as well. Because
yeah.
if you've been a journalist in newsrooms, at the worst possible time, journalists start to make very dark jokes very, very quickly. And I think it's a coping mechanism.
Mm, mm,
Tonya, the little girl, is very much me,
mm,
trying to, just sort of, she's a little force of nature, really. So I've got empathy for them all, but I know right from the off, I thought, you've got to be deranged to steal a child. You've
mm,
got to be.
mm,
So, I've got less sympathy in some ways for mummy,
mm,
but she is part of me.
mm.
So,
Yeah, I was going to kind of ask, do you have any sympathy for her? Is there, I mean, are there any parts of her character that you actually quite like? Or even Kim's, I mean, out of the characters, what are your kind of, what are your favourite parts of them, I guess, either kind of writing or just as characters, really? Is there anything kind of redeeming about Mummy, for example?
well, I mean, she's had a hellish upbringing and she's managed until the complete unraveling to make herself on the surface a very nice life.
Mm,
Kim, I just think, is a real trooper. It's like everything's been chucked at her, and she has made a family that I envy that family. One, because she's got a dog, and I'm very envious of anybody who's got dogs. Don't tell the cats. But I've never really had the sort of, the time. Loads of people have got dogs in lockdown, and I'm always thinking, yeah, but what happens when we come out the other end?
mm,
So I didn't get one in lockdown. So I love Kim. I love Steve. Steve is very much based on my own husband, who's a gamer. As I say, Tonya was very much me, like a little foul mouth, I have to say, tomboy when I was growing up. But I've got empathy for, I think, everybody, apart from the trolls. And then I sort of think, perhaps we're doing a service to let people just, spurt out the worst parts of themselves because they'd go mad if they weren't just putting out the hate. I'm not supporting that at all, but I do think they've got to be very disturbed to say some of the things that I've read
mm,
online,
mm,
which is truly shocking. Because then, aren't I as bad as them by judging them
mm,
as vile human beings for saying what they do on Twitter, on Instagram, or Facebook? I mean, I've had it a bit, not a lot, thank God, but when I went on Celebrity Fit Club, literally weeks after my mother died, and I was sobbing. I'm a sobber, what can I say? And it was like, oh, look at her, all jazz hand and fake tears. And
mm,
it was like, my mother's just died, for God's sake, give me a break. And I was very hungry.
mm.
And so it was like, they made me do press ups at 7 o'clock. Here I am, 7 o'clock in the morning doing press ups. You'd cry.
I would cry, I would. But I think that does. Like I said, I've read the book, and it was amazing. I was. People say you've got that kind of a bit of a cliche. When I sat down and read it all in one go, but I did sit down and I read it all in one go because I couldn't leave it. I had to kind of find out what happened. And I think what you've described in putting yourself into that book, I think that comes through in the book. And I think that that's what makes it such a good read and such good writing, because I think when you put yourself in there, it can't do anything but be authentic, be like an authentic voice. And I think that really comes through in the book, definitely. And also quite vulnerable as well. I think it must to make
Don't start me off.
to make yourself quite vulnerable. It must have felt quite vulnerable in that way, to put so much of yourself into the book, like you say, for people to read. And when people are reading it now, they are reading a lot of different parts of you. You know,
I feel sometimes I'm going to be a real disappointment because some of the bits of the books, it's like, very goth, very emotional. And then I turn up looking like My Little Pony. But then I've had a long time. I mean, I went on Lorraine's programme 3 days after my mum died and did a soap slot,
Mm,
because I can. And
mm,
it's my coping mechanism. And also, if you can't laugh at yourself, if you can't laugh, like, me and my husband laugh about everything. And
mm,
it's like a pressure cooker release. And
mm,
thank God I've got that, really. And I really try and look for the joy in things, and keep fit has kept me sane. So
mm,
I've been teaching all my classes online for some of the gyms I work at. Sadly, the better stuff, so the GLL classes in the community, we couldn't do because there were people like me. So I've got quite bad asthma, I'm over 60. A lot of the people I teach, my oldest participant's 97.
mm,
And I've got people in wheelchairs. It's easier to tell you when you do your PAR-Q form, to see how they are, what's right with them rather than what's wrong. So we've not been able to deliver any of that.
mm,
Of course, it's the demographic that doesn't do the Zoom. So
mm,
it's been tough thinking of, like, letting people down, because I know for me how exercise has cheered me up. And I've not really been out the house to exercise very much, because living in the middle of London, it's busy, and
mm,
there's still loads of nutters who won't wear a mask. So it's frustrating. And then when I get upset, my asthma kicks off. So I've done most of my keep fit in the house, in this room.
mm,
But it raises my game. It helps, though. It helps my anxiety. It helps my depression. And I'm very up and down with that. So,
mm.
thank God I could still do some of the work, really.
Yeah, well, we're certainly looking forward to the time when gyms are going to be open again, and also libraries, which brings me on my next question. In that, what do libraries mean to you?
So I grew up in a place called Coalville in Leicestershire, and that library was a lifesaver for me. Again, very up and down as a kid. I loved school, I loved learning, and most of my books was from the library. However, full disclosure, I didn't read that many kids' books. I read a lot of my dad's books, so I was reading The Virgin Soldiers, The Carpetbaggers, sort of things that weren't really appropriate age-wise.
Yeah.
So when I went to the library, I'd go, and they wouldn't let you check out. I'd check out things like A Wrinkle in Time and The Silver Sword for kids, but then I'd sneak and I'd be reading the adult books as I was in the library, and I spent a hell of a lot of time there. Most of my sex education came from that at an age inappropriate age, but I loved it. There's still something about that kinesthetic feel of a book. Like,
Mm,
I don't read that much on Kindle. I took it, can you remember the old days when we can go on holiday? I'd take Kindle on holiday, because otherwise I would literally have 10 books in my suitcase, because that's the time I gave myself. That's my idea of the best time ever, like, just reading loads of books. So I'm also really emotional about working class kids who perhaps can't afford books. So for me, anything I could do to support a library. I mean, I contacted you to say, can I talk about my book in libraries? And I think also people perhaps don't know that as an author, you get a bit of money when you hire a book. Like, I didn't know. You get a bit of money when people borrow your books in hospitals or prisons. Who knew? It's all new to me. So, it's just joyful, because until I became an author, until I got a publishing deal, I didn't buy hardback book, can't even say it, hardback books. I'd always wait for the paperbacks, and sometimes, I can remember 50 Shades of Grey was the moment that I think, well, I can't read this on the tube, so I got it on a Kindle. So it's like I've listened to one audiobook in my life. So I'm real old school, because I'm ancient, a book in my hands. When I was commuting to the TV Times and stuff, that was my reading time, on the tube, on the way there, on the way back. And the thought that you can borrow books still, save the rainforest, borrow a book. That, it's like, it's lovely if you want one and you want to keep it forever. But I just had a flood, in the last cold snap, we had a flood from the flat upstairs and it ruined like loads of my books. And yeah, it was really sad, but it's like, do you know, it's not the end of the world. It's like those books are now part of me, they're in my heart, which sounds really epic and, a bit. But that's true for me. It's like I don't feel I've got to hold on to them. I can let them go in the world, and if I love a book, I'll pass it on.
Mm, mm.
I might buy myself another if I miss it too much, but I just love them, and they're so support your local libraries.
Fantastic. We've just got time for one more question. So you mentioned that you were writing, you've written the second novel, or in the process of writing it at the moment, and when are we likely to see that one?
Well, it's another Viper Books thriller, and it's called at the moment Nasty Little Cut. So it's written and it's being edited. Editing means going through and through again, and like sometimes the structure changes, or basically there's a lot of swearing that has to get edited out of mine because I try and write at a splurge like inside here. And I grew up with a lot of effing and jeffing. So that has to sometimes it's a bit much. So some of that has to come out so it's not just overkill. And it's about a husband and wife just before Christmas. And those moments that you just want to stab somebody. Well, it's when both of them break, and it's like, it's not the woman as a victim. I definitely didn't want as woman of a victim. So the woman is a very feisty keep fit instructor, and the bloke has got a bad back. So it's like, just physically they're a bit more equal. But actually, again, that's the surface. It's exactly what you said. That's the tip of the iceberg. It's like, who's going to kill who just before Christmas? And then it's, again, that underneath the iceberg, why would people snap? So it's not a jolly read, but my favourite character in that is the dog. Lulu the dog is my favourite. And she thinks her name is Get Down Lulu. I actually had a Great Dane when I was growing up, and it thought its name was Get Down Harriet because a Great Dane would try and sit on your knee. So it's, Get Down Harriet. So that's my inspiration for Get Down Lulu.
Oh, fantastic. Well, we can't wait. Can't wait to read the next one. I'm going to hold
next year. Next year, I think spring next year.
Okay, Tina, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to hold up the book again. Here it is, Call Me Mummy by Tina Baker, published by Viper Books. Because this goes out on a Thursday, it'll actually be your publication day, so happy publication day to you.
I'm not having a launch or a party for obvious reasons, but yes. I'm still chuffed a bit, so thank you.
We hope you have a lovely day, and thank you so much for joining us. And please do come back when the next book comes out. Please do come back and chat to us today. Maybe we'll see you in person. You never know.
Oh God, can you?
Very exciting. Tina, thank you so much. Bye.